Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Purpose and Profit Sisterhood podcast. I'm here with my relatively new friend, Deepak Saini, who is a passionate advocate for entrepreneurial health and well being. Because if we're not vital, then our business can't be vital. So, today we're going to talk about how to optimize mental, physical, and financial performance. So, welcome, Deepak. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure to be here, Jeanette.
And so, for those of you, I know I haven't been posting as regularly lately, but the reason that I bring you these people is because I think they've got some great value for you, even though we've paused this podcast while I'm focusing more on the Maturepreneur podcast. So we want you to share this, put it out there, put it on your postings, let people know, because these are special guests that I'm bringing you for a special reason. So let me tell you a little bit about Deepak officially, and then we'll find out the juicy, hidden tidbits behind the scenes. So, Deepak Saini, did I say it right?
Saini, yeah.
Yeah, helps clients optimize mental, physical, and financial performance. Having spent many stressful years in the corporate world and overcoming the autoimmune condition and a back injury, he brings a unique perspective to working with his clients. When this father of two is not spending time with his family, he's staying at the forefront of emerging and cutting edge health research. Deepak is also a speaker, podcast host, writer, and working on becoming a centenarian. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
Centenarian.
And soon to be author too.
Awesome. That's great. Congratulations. So what's the name of the book that you have coming out?
Oh, I can't reveal that just yet. So
Oh, okay. It'll be a secret and a surprise.
yeah.
Okay. And I love that you're becoming a centenarian. There's more people who are 100 years old on the planet right now than there has been cumulatively in all of history. So
Yeah, I buy that. Yeah, that
yeah.
makes sense.
So it's not as uncommon a goal as it used to be, that's for sure. Many more people. I'm always surprised when I look at how many centenarians there are. I think there's over 1,000 in Alberta alone. Um, I
Oh,
was
I've not heard that.
I was
That
surprised.
would be that'd be news to me, but yeah, okay.
It's so it's becoming far more common, but still an admirable goal.
Although I'll say it's one thing to be, have a lifespan of 100. It's another
Yes,
thing to have a health span that's 100 plus. And I'm all about health span, not lifespan.
exactly. And that's a big distinction because, just spending those last 10, 20, 30 years in the, I call it D&D situation, the decline and decrepitude market, that's not all that much fun. So we're going to be talking about your 7 steps to success in terms of entrepreneur optimizing your mental and physical and financial health and the connections between those. So before we launch into that, tell us something about you that most people wouldn't guess.
Can I share two?
Sure.
All right. I'll the more ridiculous one first. You know how sometimes in your email inbox, whatever, you will get like a survey from like Ipsos Read or whatever, or something like that. Like I'm like a survey junkie. It's such a big waste of time. And like, but I feel like if I like fill this out, I'm making some difference in some policy decisions or something like that. It sounds so ridiculous. So I'm trying to break myself of this habit. So that's the first one. The second one is I didn't grow up with a pet at all, or like a dog, cat, nothing like that, and neither did my wife. And about almost 3 years ago now, we finally adopted a dog, and certainly embedded in part of our family and all that sort of thing. But now I'm like this total dog person, and if I have any downtime, even just waiting to record this. Episode with you here, I'm just like flipping through dog videos, funny dog videos and stuff like so. That is me. I know they're ridiculous, but anyway, I don't share that often. But since you asked, that's
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 very
that's
good.
me.
That's very fun. I think that's awesome. And I didn't grow up with a dog either. I'm mostly a cat person. And because of my mobile lifestyle, I don't have pets, but I started doing house and pet sitting so that I could kind of get a little bit of a fix of little animals that I could then give back. Like being a grandparent, you can love them up and then give them back and not have any of the vet bills or responsibility. So, but I would love to get a pet again. I'm just, you know, allergic to winter, so I go away. So tell
Fair
us
enough.
a little bit about how you came to this work. Why do you care so much about all of all of our vitality and
Yeah, absolutely. Without, maybe we'll get to my backstory later. I'm not sure, but essentially, I don't want to have people like have to like go through what I went through, have to suffer like I went through from a health, specifically health point of view. So that's why I'm so passionate about trying to make people not have the mistakes that I made early on. And then as I, evolved in my own process and my own research and what I have for myself, again, be a healthy, highly functioning centenarian. Again, like you said, not that last 2, 3 decades of being decrepit, to use your words, but like really living life. I want to pass that on to people. Now that's maybe not for everyone, and maybe we all can't actually achieve that, but like, why not like aim for that?
Mhm.
If you aim for the star or aim for the moon and you don't make it, at least you're in the stars, right? So
Yeah.
that saying. So that's why I'm so passionate about trying to like not have people have to suffer needlessly. And our system is getting better, but it is not ideal. And frankly, there's a bunch of BS involved in it as well. So if I can just help educate people to go down a better path than what maybe's been laid out for them or they've been told they can do, then that's what I'm all here to do.
So you did mention your backstory and that you healed from something. So I'm assuming that that's part of what's driven you to this, but has health and well-being or having people be able to be who they want to be, has that something that's kind of persisted throughout your life?
No, not really. I guess, I mean, probably starting back in high school and then on into university. Like I always like mentored other people, other kids, other young adults, that sort of thing. So that was always part of my nature, my DNA, if you will. And it wasn't until overcoming my health journey and realized I wanted to do this as a profession. Now I'm a CPA by first profession, but wanted to help people in this way. It just came very naturally to me, wanting to help and work with others overcome whatever is their challenge. So yeah, I guess it's been with me for a long time before I got into this work, but yeah, it certainly means a lot more after you've come through the out the other side, so to speak, of
Right.
my own health journey.
So tell us a little bit about your journey. So what was the issue that you overcame and what actually kind of turned the tide for you to become this advocate to how did you take your well-being into your own hands?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be super brief here, but I was morbidly obese as a teenager, so 100 pounds heavier than I am now. I was chronically sick my entire life, chronic infections, bronchitis, at least that's what they called it back then, all this sort of thing. But in 2014, my youngest daughter was a baby. I hurt my back. I had no flexion. I couldn't bend over at the waist. So I couldn't even pick up a 10-pound baby out of her crib. Very difficult getting in and out of a chair, putting on your socks, etc. That includes, getting on and off the toilet,
Mhm.
which maybe some people might see. Maybe they're struggling themselves, or maybe with their parents or their grandparents. So that was my low point. I like to say the Western medical system wasted 18 months of my health,
Mhm.
run around through the system, ineffective treatments, misdiagnosis, etc. So finally, I got sick and tired of it. I took matters into my own hands, found an alternative modality to heal my back, but in conjunction with that, I also made lifestyle changes, primarily through nutrition, but sleeping better, just trying to bring inflammation down generally in my body. And so while my back healed better, and I eventually did heal my back using PRP, platelet-rich plasma treatments, the last 60 of the 100 pounds melted away in just a matter of months, which was for someone who struggled with weight their entire life. That was a welcome byproduct of trying to heal my back. And lo and behold, my autoimmune condition went into remission. I essentially have not been sick for the last almost 10 years, and that's all during COVID and all that. So yeah,
Wow.
I think I'm doing something right. So I'm just trying to educate. And everyone doesn't necessarily have to do what Deepak does, but just trying to help educate people to like do what fits for them in their lifestyle.
So what is PRP? Tell a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. PRP, platelet-rich plasma. So basically, they take vials of my own blood out, and I think people understand there's different components of our blood. They spin it in a centrifuge and separate the platelets, which are very rich with proteins and healing antibodies. Separate the platelets, and then in my case, they inject it right into my back. So I've diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, my L4, L5, L5S1, low back for those who maybe don't know. So they'd inject right 4 shots right into those joints. So that causes a lot of inflammation to begin with, just taking the shots. But the theory being that the healing antibodies and proteins from the PRP, again, this is my own blood, so it's nothing foreign to my body, helps then in the healing process. And again, it's a bit of a cycle. And they were very upfront with me. Low back is a very tricky spot of the body, like many people understand. So that was like a 6 7 month process of about every 6 weeks doing these shots. It was not covered by healthcare. It was very out of pocket. It's not inexpensive to do that, but yeah, I mean, I eventually essentially healed my back of the chronic pain I was in, and the rest is history. Again, of course, there's lifestyle choices as well, but
So what it sounds like is it kind of intensifies your body's own healing platelets and kind of front loads them or puts more of them at the location that needs that support. Because I was going to
absolutely.
say, well, it's already in your body, so why is it not already doing the work? But it's really just intensifying and focusing more of it there. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing what came to the realization, if I can just show the funny story, when I kind of came to the notion that like just inflammation in general is like such a big deal. I was thinking, I think it was just the fourth round of these shots, and I said to the doctor, I was like, "Hey, like, I'm not a doctor, but I'm doing all this research. If I bring inflammation down systemically through my body by nutrition, what have you, this should work better, right?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. You totally understand it." So he must have read the expression on my face because I was about to like yell at him, like, "Why didn't you tell me this before?" And he said, "Well, most people will not change their lifestyle or change their eating habits, what have you." I just kind of stopped telling people. I'm like, "Listen, buddy." I used more choice words than that, but I said, "Listen, buddy. Like, I'm not golfing. I'm not running. I can't pick up my children. I'm going to do whatever." So like that day, cold turkey, I started eating clean. I use air quotes because that's evolved over time, and I think that's an individualized approach.
Mhm.
But yeah, that definitely helped bring general inflammation down in my body so that the procedure could work better. Again, right injected at site.
Well, he's not wrong. The book by what's his name? Change or Die. Alan Deutschman. He did a lot of studies on people who were morbidly obese, heart recidivists, so repeat offenders, and quadruple bypass patients. And all of these people were in a category that were literally told if you don't change, you will die. And the percentage that changed shockingly low, right? So literally you will die. 10% changed. The other 90% would rather die than have to change their diet or their behaviors or their whatever it may be. So I can understand his
We all have them in our families.
yeah,
These people, right? Who'd rather die, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, and so what is it that made you change? Because you were one of that 10%. And all people have those motivators of, they want to be able to golf or whatever, but they don't do the work. So what is it do you think that shifted in your mindset or that how did you think about it that actually got you to make the changes?
Yeah, I like to call it, and everyone's going to call it something different. Like I call it my why. It was a big drawing for me. It's something I can still go back to because I remember how sucky life was back then, and I never want to go back to that position. Like, remember, I couldn't do any of the activities I liked doing. I could barely get to work. I was able to still work and muddle through. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't golf, but I couldn't pick up my daughter who was a baby, and my older daughter, I couldn't play with her. I was one of those dads who likes to, roughhouse and toss the kids up in the air. I couldn't do any of that stuff anymore. So it was my desire to like be the dad I wanted to be present for my family. Remember, this is 10 years ago. I was 37 years old, and I had the body of like a 77-year-old or even older. I'm like, this isn't going to do. So, that was my impetus, my why, that really driving force. And again, I can always tie back to that how sucky life was, and if I get a little aches or pains now, I can always go back to what did I do? I'm
Mhm.
not, maybe I didn't do my stretching, or I'm eating something that's I know I shouldn't, it's inflammatory. Like why am I having these pains again? And then I can quickly adapt. So again, I just wanted to be the dad I wanted to be,
Right,
with a young, my kids were a baby and 3 years old at that time.
right. So you had a big motivation that really impelled you to make the changes. You mentioned inflammation a bunch of times, and I know that that's a really big thing that we don't necessarily know much about. So how big a component was that to your healing process, and in general, what should we know about inflammation?
Inflammation, I think, is the root cause of all disease in some way, and people don't even necessarily recognize what inflammation could look like. It presents itself many ways. You have acne. Yes, there's a hormonal approach to acne or a hormonal component, especially if you're in puberty and that sort of thing, right? But if you have acne that doesn't make sense, or any sort of skin condition, that's inflammation. You eat something one night and you're like, oh, what happened to my abs, or that little extra 5 pounds of muffin top you got? That's inflammation. Uh, uh, you know, uh, you get you eat something and you get a runny nose immediately. And then there is a bit of a genetic component to that, but like that can also be inflammation.
Hmm.
Inflammation, sore joints, what have you. All these things are just different manifestations of inflammation. So I think it's a root cause of many things. So if we can bring it down, and again, this can be different for everyone. For me, the foods I was choosing to eat, we all make our own choices, was a huge cause of inflammation for me. Seed oil, sugar, gluten, dairy, etc. And I'm not saying people can't eat these things, but I think we have to understand our bodies, and that's why I'm kind of really big into individualization and testing, which we can maybe talk about later. But these are all root causes of inflammation. So find out what's your inflammation marker, eliminate those things, and you'll feel so much better, and your health will be a lot better. So
Well, and you mentioned individualization. I think that's really important. That there's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all solution. So, how do people find what their way is that works?
well, you can work with a professional, that could be a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine doctor, or someone like myself, a coach who's been trained in these type of things. You can do an elimination diet for yourself. I mean, we're talking about just kind of the food thing. There's also environmental things as well. Sometimes, we don't know how good we can actually feel until we like eliminate some things, and you're like, oh, this is what it feels like to like have energy and not be in pain and that sort of thing. Once I cleaned out my body, my system, so to speak, even environmental things like topical things like lotions and creams and shampoos and deodorant and stuff like that, I have to be very careful with what I use, if I use anything at all, because my body's like, oh no, we don't like that, and like, I get it, and a rash or something. That's again an inflammation response. Like, no, we don't like this. Don't use this thing. So it can be a whole host of things. It could be things in our environment, and some things we can control. Many things we can. Some things we can't. Even to the cleaning products we use or we put on our lawn or what have you. So it comes in many different forms. I think we just have to be cognizant of that, and make the small changes incrementally over time, because they make in the long run, they make a big difference.
Okay, that makes lots of sense. So, how do you equate? Because you mentioned our physical vitality really impacts our business vitality. So, as an entrepreneur and someone who works with a lot of entrepreneurs, what's the correlation there?
Yeah, I have yet to work with, and I just should just backtrack. So not only do I primarily work with people on their health and their like personal vitality, many people also hire me like because of my 20 plus years as a CPA and being in the marketing space now, et cetera, also hire me to like, coach them for their entrepreneurs. So I see it all around. I only bring this up because I have yet to meet an entrepreneur who doesn't achieve more in their business once their health is in check. That's both their mental and physical health. When you're not inflamed, you make better decisions. You make faster decisions. You show up how you want to show up, with your employees, with your in your family, with your kids, with your spouse, your partner, what have you. When I'll speak from experience. When I was going through my journey and I had, this chronic back pain, I could barely move. Like I would snap at the littlest things because like the pain is just grinding on me. That inflammation was just grinding on me. I didn't have the bandwidth to like be who I wanted to be. And I'm not saying I'm perfect now. Ask my wife; she'll say I'm not perfect. But it's much better because I don't have that inflammation. I can react better. I have time to, actually like take a second and how I want to react. So I've yet to meet an entrepreneur who, when you, and again, we don't have to be perfect, but when you have things dialed in, your health dialed in better, you perform better at work. And it doesn't take as long to do things. You can be so much more efficient. I've seen this both for entrepreneurs and people in the corporate world in their jobs as well.
Right. Well, it makes sense. There's definitely a mind body connection, and when we're physically feeling better, then we think better as well. So, how do people know? Because you mentioned inflamed. How do people know when they are? We're kind of like the frogs in the water that gets turned up slowly. We probably have all sorts of issues, but we aren't aware of it because we live with it every day. So, how do we know when things are not actually operating the way they should be because it's how they operate is so familiar to us? How do we
Yeah,
know
great.
we have inflammation?
Great question. We've been conditioned as a society to have this notion of aging that when you get to a certain point, whatever you want to call it, 40, 50, 60, whatever, you're supposed to start to slow down. And I think that's a bunch of BS. Think about how you like just pick, it doesn't matter how old you are. Go back 20 years. Very simple. We can get more scientific, but let's go back 20 years. Do you feel as good as you did 20 years ago?
Me personally, no, not right now.
Okay, well, that was a theoretical question, but yes,
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. I'm fortunate enough. I feel a hell of a lot better now than I did 20
yeah,
years ago when I was sick and fat. But just generally to the person, if you're not feeling as good as you did, there's probably something going on. And you've maybe been labeled with some sort of condition, chronic fatigue or this or arthritis. I think this is all inflammation. If you've been diagnosed with something,
mhm,
or something's wrong or something just doesn't feel right, this is inflammation. This is something that needs to be addressed, or you don't feel as good as you did in the past. There's something to look into. There's absolutely no reason, and it's gonna vary, of course. Everyone's individual, like I said before. There's absolutely no reason why you can't have like a ton of energy, spit and vinegar in your veins, into your 70s, 80s, and beyond. And if
yeah,
you're not feeling that way, and if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, something needs to be addressed, and
yeah.
start that journey to what that is for you.
That makes sense. And yeah, there's such a societal assumption that we will decline. Our hearing goes, our eyesight goes, our capability goes, our cognitive abilities go, and it's assumed that that's just a given. I
Yeah,
was,
just on the thing, and I just want to be perfectly clear. There is a natural decline, but most people feel like, oh, I hit 40, 50, and it's like off a cliff. No, that's not actually normal. There is
yeah,
a natural decline, and it's very steep down. So if you've had this big, or someone you love, like, that's something that needs to be looked at.
right. Yeah. And I think that, we're just trained to assume that there's more of an issue than there actually is. I read This Chair Rocks by Ashton Applewhite, and I was really surprised to read in there, although I have not actually confirmed the statistic for Canada or just in general. And she mentioned that only 1 to 2% of the population is impacted by dementia and Alzheimer's. I thought it was far more rampant, far more prevalent, and far more foregone conclusion, right? That almost
I,
every
I would I would challenge those stats. I've seen stats that are way higher than that for sure.
Okay, well, I want to go look it up and see, but I was surprised that it was low, lower than I expected, but also not inevitable. That not everyone has to go in that direction, and that part of that is physical health maintains our mental health as well.
Absolutely, and I'll just full disclosure. I've shared this so that I've done testing on myself. I have one of the variants of the Alzheimer's gene that makes me about 15% more susceptible to getting Alzheimer's than the general population, and I have Alzheimer's in my family, so double whammy. Um, does this scare me? Is this like, oh my God, death sentence? No, it's an information data point that now I can address. And many, if not all of my lifestyle choices are to address not only that, but other things that I know about myself to mitigate those. Now, does that mean I will never get Alzheimer's? No, but I'd rather get it at 95 than at 65.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what I'm working on.
So how can people find out more about where they're actually at? So you've mentioned testing, and I know I've done some work with a naturopath, and there's some very extensive testing that you can go through, and fairly expensive testing too. But so let's talk about what's possible in terms of really finding out things so that you get really present with what is, and then let's pull it back to what are some first steps that people can take now. So
Absolutely. So I'm huge on the testing. I think there's four big tests that I like some of my clients. Again, I work with different people. So some of my clients that I like to get them have is number one, your biological age. Where are you actually at right now versus your chronological age? So I'm actually just doing a revised one. It's been a couple of years since I did mine, so I'll be happy to update later. But when I did it about 5 years ago, my biological age was 12 years younger than my chronological age. And this was
Wow.
after going through my transformation and healing myself and all that sort of thing. So I love people getting that as a benchmark. If you're your age or older, like, oh my gosh, like you have work to do.
What
Your
does that
head,
measure to find that out?
sorry, I missed
What
that.
does that measure to find that out?
Oh, what does that mean? So it's a simple blood test and it measures just a bunch of different oh boy, ask me a scientific question here on the spot here. What does it measure? It measures a bunch of different alleles on different markers of your blood. And again, these tests are not perfect,
So just a
right?
on
It's
the
it's
blood
not
test.
it's not doing a full body. It's a bit of a snapshot, but this is the best we have, and these tests are getting better and better. They're sometimes called age clocks as well.
Oh,
So great question. So that's one DNA test, as I mentioned, just so you know, like legitimately what has been passed down from your ancestors for generations
mhm.
to what you have more propensity to. And again, this doesn't mean you're going to get cancer or whatever, Alzheimer's in my case. This means something to be aware of and what you can mitigate. Microbiome test, right? Our microbiome is our, our gut is our, some people pretty much accept it's our second brain now. Some people even argue it's actually our first brain. It's actually making the decisions, up that gut brain axis. And then the last one is metabolics, which is a relatively new field. I'm super excited about that. Basically, all your food, all your supplements, all your medications, what is actually coming out the other end out of digestion. And here's something interesting. I literally just done this test just a few months ago, and I found there's a neurotransmitter that I am my body that we produce naturally, but through all my food and everything I do, I actually out the other end, I am not producing it. I'm deficient in this. And this is super important for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. I already said I have Alzheimer's. So like, so I need to supplement. I would never have known that if I didn't do this like cutting edge test. So those are the big four that I like. Oh, obviously, you got your basic blood work and your cholesterol and all that stuff. Like that's your basics. But for more advanced testing, those are the big four that I like to work on, or my clients to get right off the get
And
go.
where would they go to get something like that?
Right here, you can talk to me. It's part of the package I work on. There's a lot of companies out there that do these things. Some are better than others. You can look in them out on your own. I think that the real secret sauce, if you will, is getting them in combination, including your basic lab work as well, and actually painting that picture of the roadmap of what implementation to any change looks like. That's
Mm.
kind of my specialty there. Sometimes these tests will actually give you counter indicators. One will say do this, and the other one will say do the other thing. It's like, well, now I'm confused. Well, you have to look at the person as a whole, and that's why a great intake and what people's ethnicity and cultural factors, and then come up with a roadmap, so to speak, go forward. So, but yeah, certainly you can go look at some of these up on your own if you wanted to, or pick and choose and do them as you can. Again, as you mentioned, they're some are $500, some are more like $1,000, and we all have to make that decision in our own budgets.
Right. So, what are some things that people can get started with right now that would help them feel better? So, for example, what are some things that reduce inflammation?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing to reduce inflammation is don't eat the things that are your kryptonite foods, and that's gonna be different for everyone. Now, there's some generally ones like this one actually most people are starting to understand this, but many people still don't understand. Industrial seed oils, so your canola oil, your safflower oil, peanut oil, all these very highly processed oils, excuse me, is probably the number one thing that causes inflammation, worldwide. So all your processed foods, your fast foods, deep fried foods, all these sorts of things, be probably the number one. Sugar, probably number two. Most people understand this. We can't do it in excess. At least sugar your body can use to an extent, right? It's only when we get in excess that's a problem. Other people have trouble with gluten. Not everyone. Not everyone's. I'm not celiac, but I am sensitive to gluten, the protein, so I have to be careful of that. And then dairy. Some people think they're lactose intolerant, and they very well could be. Many people are. Lactose is a sugar, but it's actually for me, it's not the lactose, the sugar. It's actually the beta casein, which is a protein
Mm.
and one variant of the protein. So again, and then nightshades and all these things going down the list. So to some degree, people have on that sensitivity spectrum, have that, and just what is the most thing for you? Legumes. People say, oh, beans, give you gas or whatever. It's like, no, that's because you lack the digestive enzymes
Mm.
And that's causing inflammation. If you have gas from something, that is an inflammatory response. That is your body signaling, we can't handle this. It's
Interesting, because I always get gas from popcorn and cabbage, or not cabbage, cauliflower, um, and cabbage a bit too. So those are things that my body is saying this is causing inflammation and gas within me. So those are
and those are very sulfuric foods, so you probably don't have the enzymes to handle that sulfur. And if you did something different, you maybe could, or you might just say, it's not worth it. I don't like those foods that much anyway.
because I was quite surprised that not everybody who ate popcorn farted. I thought that was just again that it just went together, and other people were like, "No, no,
Like peanut butter and jelly, popcorn and farting. Yeah,
yeah, exactly." Okay, so some of this sounds daunting to people. What's a really good starting point? What's one or two things that people can do to both start to tune into what the body may need, but also just to start shifting things that they can feel some benefit from?
absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is a perfect segue to the free gift I'm going to give to your audience here.
Right.
So my free gift is a 7-step guide to optimize your mental, physical, and financial performance. And basically, there's 7 areas. Very intro. You don't need to spend any money, or it doesn't take a lot of time or anything like that. You can just get started and start to build new healthy habits. And then there's a tracker at the back so you can track these habits. Now, I'm going to be perfectly upfront. Don't try and do all 7 at one time. You're setting yourself up for failure. Do 1, maybe 2 at max. Okay,
Yeah.
people, just 1 or 2 at max. Track it for 30 days. If it resonates with you, awesome. You've created a new habit. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Go back and try another one. And after some period of time, you'll try it all 7 if you're not already doing them. And you'll have picked up maybe 2, 3, maybe all 7 new healthy habits that are moving you in the right direction, getting you started, that doesn't cost you anything.
Cool. And I'm looking at the 7 areas right now, and it's interesting because none of them explicitly say nutrition or food, unless that's number 4, the largest area people tend to neglect, maybe. But it's a lot of things that people may not, be thinking about. So sleep, fasting, movement, meditation, those kinds of things, and how they impact us. So that's really cool. I'm going to go download that right away. And so what would you say is one thing that people could probably, um, if they did this one thing right now, it would support them in having a better day? And I know it's different for every person, right? But what's it generally one of the things where people get some real quick wins?
Yeah, that's a great question because I could probably list off 10 easy things that what you could do. So I'm going to go with this one. This is just what resonates with me right now. Just came to me is people may have heard this term slow down to speed up.
Mm.
We have this busy lifestyle, entrepreneurs, whatever, families, juggling priorities. Sometimes actually just taking a moment for yourself, close your eyes, take a couple of deep breaths. There's lots of different ways to do breathing techniques. Just sets you up. It seems, counterintuitive to the logical brain, like, oh, taking a minute for myself, that puts me a minute behind. No, actually, you're in a better place. You're going to do everything, go forward more efficiently, better, and more presently in how you actually want to show up in the world. So I
Right.
would say to the answer to your question is just take a moment, take even 30 seconds, close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, or in through your nose, out through your nose. Slow down for a second. Your heart rate comes down, your cortisol levels come down,
Mhm.
and then go on with your day.
Right. Well, and even as you're saying that, I'm just kind of breathing and pausing, and I notice my shoulders dropped, and so yes, it's a moment of mindfulness can make a big difference. Um, I love this, and I love the reminder, and I'm thinking here, that many of these things I've heard before and resist, and you know, people may be thinking, well, I know this already. To know and not do is not to know, right? And so really it is about change. That's why I asked you what really supported you in your change, because 90% of people won't. So to really
And just
understand,
starting, like I said, just starting one thing at a time. Again,
yeah.
whether you download the free gift or not, just you don't have to do all 7. Do one thing, and I'll just share one just as we wrap up here. Gosh, what are we on through about a month now? My daughter is like, let's do a Pilates challenge. I'm like, oh, okay. I was more impressed she wanted to actually do something with her dad. So I was like, absolutely, I'll do it. And I already do my workout and I already do my strength training, my cardio. I already do my strength training. I already do stretching. Again, that's part of my back, keeping my back healthy routine is a very robust stretching routine. I'm like, okay, I can add some Pilates on there. It's extended my, let's call it self-care time by another, 10 or 15 minutes. But I wanted, it's something we're doing together. So we're doing bonding and building on that relationship. And I was like, yeah, okay. And now we've done it for about yeah, 3 weeks a month or something. Like now it's become part of my routine now.
That's
So I
awesome.
just did one thing and now I've just added something else to help my body. So
I love it. And it's going to also help your heart because you're spending time loving your daughter and being loved by her, and that's a beautiful.
absolutely.
That's awesome. So how do people get in touch with you, Deepak, and how do they find out more about you?
Yeah, well, number one, I would say download the guide. I know we'll put the link in the show notes there. That not only do you get the guide that kind of puts in my ecosystem, so you can know what I'm all about. Any promotions I have, I email content, free content to my audience regularly. I share things that interesting things that other people are doing. So I think that's the best way to get to know about me and get to know me better and learn what I'm up to.
That's awesome. And so just spell out your website for people in case they don't see the show notes or they're just listening to the.
Absolutely. So it's my first name, last name, health.com. So DeePakSaini health.com.
Okay. And the gift that he's giving you is slash freebie. So his website slash freebie. You can go and grab that. And the most important thing, of course, is the application of it. But like Deepak said, do it, implement it as you can. And you mentioned doing the thing with your daughter. I find it really helps when I have someone that I'm doing these things with, an accountability partner or buddy or someone to kind of support me in the shifts and environmental things that help me make the shift. I'm woefully, like many people, underhydrated, so I make sure I've always got a thing of water right near me, and therefore I drink more water. So there's a lot of little things that we can do that helps make some shifts, but it also
Absolutely.
really helps to have an expert who can go deeper, find out the real cause of things, do some of these tests, do some of these things to find out what's really going on and what you can do to change it. Because yeah, we get to be the boss of us if we choose to be. So what's one last idea? And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things I just want to add here is one of the things that is really important, like I mentioned, is community, having a community that supports you in being who you want to be. So if you don't have a supportive community, or even if you just want more supportive community, please go to maturepreneur.world. Check out the network. It is a really, really great community for those of you who are growing your business, who are growing yourself as a human being, who are taking on what's next in this chapter, whatever that next chapter is for you. And we do better when we have support. So if you are really committed to tackling your health, it helps to have a guide and a supporter and a cheerleader like Deepak. Don't try and do life alone. It just doesn't work well. So Deepak, what's one last final thought you'd like to leave everyone?
Absolutely. First, I just want to say I think community is huge. Community is one of the pillars of healthy aging. Whatever that looks like, that's your family, that's your extended family, that's your support networks, your church, whatever it may be. So community is huge. So I love that you brought that up, Jeanette. I would say the one last thing I'd say is no matter where you're at in your journey, health, entrepreneurial, whatever,
Mhm.
take one step. Just take one step, whatever it is. There's always room for improvement.
Mhm.
It could seem daunting, and don't look to Deepak, don't look to Jeanette, don't look to some other influencer or whatever, like, oh my God, I'll never reach that. No, just take one step forward in your journey, and that next step will build on the next thing. And then you look a year later, you look back, you're like, I can't believe how far I've come. So whatever it is for you, if it's weight loss, it's starting to strength train, it's making more sales calls so you can grow your business, whatever it is, just take that one step, move
Mhm.
yourself forward.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, Deepak. But more significantly, thank you for being such a passionate advocate of vitality and a great example of it. I think that there's certainly a lot of truth in the correlation between the vitality of our business and our vitality. And I literally just wrote in my new little health tracker journal that I bought yesterday that my goals that I set the one of the primary reasons was that I want to be a vital example when I'm on stage speaking and when I'm doing events and things like that. I want to be an example of vitality and self-love in action. And so that's a big part of what motivates me with my goals. So now, hasn't been in the past, but turning the
Well,
volume up
I
on,
love that. I love that for you.
and I think it's, the moral behind the story is it's never too late to take that first step that he was just advocating.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I appreciate being on the show.
have a great day, everybody. A great week. Go do that one thing. Support yourself with it. Put it in your calendar. Get a buddy, get a partner, get a coach. It really helps to have experts support you in your intentions so you can be the difference that only you can be. Thanks for being here. Have a great week. Bye, everybody.